The first time my sister Bella called my pottery business a hobby, I was holding my most intricate piece yet, a delicate vase adorned with hand-carved butterflies. I nearly dropped it. The way she said it, dripping with condescension, made my fingers twitch around the ceramic. I'm Zara, and I've been creating pottery since I was 12. What started in our parents' garage has grown into a full-fledged home studio, though Bella refuses to see it that way. Really, Zara? Bella's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her wine glass at our monthly family dinner. You're still playing with clay? I thought you'd have grown out of that by now. Mom shot her a warning look across the table, but Bella continued. I just closed a 7-figure deal today. Maybe it's time you considered a real career. I could put in a word at my company. I forced a smile, pushing my food around my plate. My business is doing well, actually. I just got commissioned for a restaurant's entire dinnerware set. Oh, honey. Bella laughed that practice laugh she'd perfected in corporate boardrooms. That's sweet, but let's be realistic. How many cups and plates can you possibly make in that little shed of yours? It's a professional studio, I corrected, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. And I've hired help. Kira started last month. You hired someone. Bella nearly choked on her wine. For your hobby? Dad cleared his throat. Bella, that's enough. But the damage was done. I excused myself early that night, retreating to my studio where I felt most at home. The familiar scent of clay and glazes welcomed me as I flicked on the lights. My latest collection lined the shelves, each piece telling its own story, each curve and pattern carefully crafted by my hands. The next morning, my best friend Emery dropped by with coffee and croissants. You look like you need this, she said, finding me already at my wheel. Bella happened, I explained, accepting the coffee gratefully. Ah, the corporate queen strikes again. Emery pulled up a stool. What was it this time? The usual. Apparently I'm still playing with clay while she's out there closing million-dollar deals. You know what? Emery leaned forward. You should invite her to that craft fair next month. Show her what your hobby really looks like. I paused, considering it. The spring artisan market was the biggest event of the season, and I'd been preparing for months. She'd probably just laugh. Then let her laugh. But make her watch while others appreciate your work. That afternoon, I met with Griffin, my business mentor, at his downtown office. He'd been guiding me through the business side of things for the past year. Your sister's wrong, he said bluntly, after I recounted last night's dinner. I've seen your books, Zara. Your revenue has doubled in the last 6 months. Try telling her that. Don't tell her anything. Griffin leaned back in his chair. Show her. Actions speak louder than words in business. Always have. Always will. I left his office feeling more determined than ever. Back in my studio, I worked late into the night, perfecting pieces for the upcoming fair. My hands moved with purpose, shaping the clay with increasing confidence. The next week, another family dinner rolled around. This time, Bella brought news of her latest promotion. Vice President of Operations, she announced proudly, youngest in the company's history. That's wonderful, dear, Mom beamed. Speaking of operations, I spoke up, surprising myself with my steady voice. I've been invited to showcase at the spring artisan market. You should come, Bella. See what my hobby looks like in action. Bella's smile faltered slightly. Oh, I don't know. I'm quite busy with the new position. It's just one afternoon, I pressed. Unless you're afraid to see what your little sister has built. The challenge in my voice was clear. For a moment, Bella's perfectly composed facade cracked. Fine, she said finally. I'll stop by. Briefly. As I drove home that night, my hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. For years, I'd let Bella's words chip away at my confidence like excess clay from a sculpture. But not anymore. The spring artisan market would be my moment to prove that my passion wasn't just a hobby. It was a thriving business. In my studio, I looked at the butterfly vase that had started this latest round of criticism. Its wings seemed to flutter in the evening light, delicate yet strong, just like my resolve. I picked up my tools and began working on a new piece. my sister's dismissive laughter echoing in my mind, fueling every movement of my hands. The morning of the spring artisan market dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the fairgrounds at 6 a.m., my truck loaded with carefully packed pottery. Kira met me there, her usual enthusiasm contagious even at this early hour. "Let's show them what we've got," she said, helping me unload. We transformed our assigned space into an elegant display, each piece positioned to catch the morning light. "The butterfly collection should go front and center," Kira suggested, arranging my signature vases. "These are going to sell out fast." Griffin stopped by as we were finishing up. Looking professional, he nodded approvingly. "Remember what we discussed about pricing? No underselling yourself today." "I know." I adjusted a price tag that reflected my work's true value, something Griffin had been drilling into me for months. "But what if no one buys at these prices?" "They will." He picked up one of my mugs, examining the intricate leaf pattern. "Quality speaks for itself." The market opened at 9. By 10, we'd already sold 3 pieces from the butterfly collection. Each sale felt like a small victory, especially when customers praised the craftsmanship. "This is exquisite," one woman said, cradling a vase. "The detail work is remarkable." I was explaining my glazing technique when I heard a familiar voice. Well, quite the little setup you have here." Bella stood there in her designer suit, looking completely out of place among the artisan stalls. She picked up one of my bowls, checking the bottom for the price. "Seriously, Zara, 300 for a bowl?" "Hand-carved pattern, triple-fired glaze," I replied steadily. "And yes, people are buying them." As if on cue, a man approached our stall. "Excuse me," he said to Bella, who was still holding the bowl. "Are you planning to purchase that? Because if not, I'd like to buy it." Bella's eyebrows shot up as she handed it over. I wrapped the bowl carefully while the man paid without hesitation. "Excellent choice," a deep voice commented from behind us. "The craftsmanship is outstanding." I turned to see a tall man in his 40s, studying our display with interest. "I'm River," he introduced himself. "I have a particular appreciation for fine ceramics." Bella straightened her spine, switching to her networking mode. "Bella Summers, Vice President at—" "I know who you are," River cut her off, his tone cooling noticeably. "Your reputation precedes you." He turned back to me. "Your work shows remarkable skill. Have you considered wholesale distribution?" Before I could answer, 3 more customers approached, and I was pulled into a whirlwind of sales and discussions. Bella lingered at the edge of our stall, watching as piece after piece sold. "I need to get back to the office," she finally announced, but I barely had time to acknowledge her departure. By late afternoon, Kira was updating our inventory list with growing excitement. "Zara, we've sold almost everything, even the experimental pieces," Griffin returned, grinning when he saw our nearly empty display. "What did I tell you? Quality sells itself." "I can't believe it," I admitted, counting the day's earnings. "These are better numbers than I projected for the whole weekend." "Believe it," Griffin said firmly, "and this is just the beginning. 3 gallery owners asked about your work today. I've got their cards here." As we packed up the few remaining pieces, River appeared again. "Successful day?" "Very," I smiled, still riding the high of exceeding my sales goals. "Good." He glanced around before lowering his voice. "Listen, about your sister, be careful with her. She's not as successful as she appears." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Let's just say her corporate empire isn't built on solid ground. I've seen how she operates." He handed me his business card. "Call me if you want to know more." Before I could press him for details, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving me with more questions than answers. That evening, I sat in my studio, surrounded by the day's earnings and potential gallery contracts. My phone buzzed with a text from Bella. "Congratulations on your craft fair success. Maybe you're not just playing around after all." I stared at the message, then at River's business card on my desk. Something felt off about his warning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on. Emery called as I was loading the kiln with new pieces to replace my sold inventory. How'd it go? Did you show Bella what's what? Better than I expected, I said, closing the kiln door. But something weird happened. This guy named River. A crash from outside interrupted me. I rushed to the window just in time to see a figure disappearing into the darkness, leaving behind a shattered pottery piece on my studio steps. 3 weeks after the craft fair, I was glazing a new batch of vases when Kira burst into the studio, her phone thrust forward. "Zara, you need to see this." The headline made me drop my brush. Major financial scandal rocks Summit Corp. VP of Operations suspended pending investigation. My sister's company. My sister's position. "There's more," Kira scrolled through the article. "They're saying millions were mismanaged, suspicious transactions, potential fraud." My phone started buzzing, Mom calling. Before I could answer, a news alert popped up. "Breaking, Summit Corp executives face criminal investigation." "I should go," I told Kira, already grabbing my keys. "Can you handle the afternoon class?" I found my parents' house in chaos. Mom was pacing the living room, phone pressed to her ear, while Dad sat shell-shocked on the couch watching news coverage. "Where is she?" I asked. Dad pointed upstairs. "In her old room. She won't come out." I took the stairs 2 at a time, finding Bella's childhood bedroom door locked. "It's me," I called out, knocking softly. "Go away." "Not happening. Open up." After a long pause, the lock clicked. I entered to find Bella sitting on her old bed, still in her power suit, but now it looked wrinkled and defeated. Her makeup was streaked with tears. "I didn't do it," she whispered. "I swear, Zara, I didn't do it." "What happened?" "Someone set me up. All these transactions, they look like they came from my department, but I never authorized them." She grabbed her phone, showing me emails. "See, these approvals have my signature, but I never signed them. Someone forged everything." A memory flashed. River at the craft fair, his cryptic warning about Bella's empire not being built on solid ground. "They suspended me this morning," Bella continued, her voice breaking. "Security escorted me out. Everyone was watching. Everything I worked for. Gone." My phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Summit Corp stock plummets amid scandal. Thousands of jobs at risk. "It's everywhere," Bella groaned. "Social media, news. God, they're calling me a criminal. 15 years of working my way up, and in one day..." She broke down completely then, something I hadn't seen since we were kids. I sat beside her, awkwardly patting her back as she sobbed. "Have you called a lawyer?" I asked when she calmed down. 3. They all want massive retainers up front. She laughed bitterly. "Funny thing is, I can't access my accounts. They're all frozen pending investigation." The doorbell rang downstairs. Through the window, I saw news vans parking along our parents' street. "Miss Summers," voices called up. "Can you comment on the allegations?" Mum appeared in the doorway, looking panicked. "They're everywhere. What do we do?" I pulled the curtains shut and helped Bella to her feet. "We're getting you out of here. Use the back door. My car's in the garage." As we snuck out, reporters continued shouting questions. I caught fragments. "Millions missing. Executive conspiracy. Criminal charges pending." At my house, Bella collapsed onto my couch while I made tea. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Emery and Griffin, but I ignored them for now. "I can't go home," Bella said quietly. "They're probably camping outside my apartment too." "Stay here tonight." She looked around my living room, taking in the pottery displays and workshop schedules posted on the wall. "Your hobby," she started, then corrected herself. "Your business. It's really something, isn't it? It pays the bills," I said, handing her the tea. "Better than I'm doing right now." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails. Every minute there's another one. Cancelled credit cards, membership revocations, board resignations. They're erasing me. A new message popped up on her screen, from River. Bella's hand shook as she opened it. "Hope you're enjoying the news," she read aloud. "Karma's finally caught up." You know him. He used to work at Summit, left under complicated circumstances. She looked up at me. What did he say to you at the craft fair? Before I could answer, another news alert flashed. Summit Corp announces mass layoffs, thousands affected by financial scandal. Bella's phone rang, her lawyer. As she answered it, I slipped into my studio, finally checking my messages. Among them was a text from River. Your sister's downfall is just beginning. Want to know the whole story? Through the window, I could see Bella pacing my living room, gesturing frantically as she talked to her lawyer. The confident corporate executive was gone, replaced by someone scared and vulnerable. I looked at River's message again, my finger hovering over the reply button. The truth was within reach, but did I really want to know it? A week into Bella's stay at my house, she finally asked the question I'd been dreading. I need a job, she said over breakfast, pushing her untouched toast around the plate. Any chance you could use help in the studio? I nearly choked on my coffee. You want to work for me? I know it's not ideal, she admitted, but my accounts are still frozen, and the legal fees. She trailed off, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen her. I'll do anything, even if it's just sweeping floors. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was my sister, who'd spent years mocking my hobby, now begging to be part of it. There are conditions, I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. First, you start at the bottom. No special treatment. Bella nodded quickly. Second, you'll need to learn everything. Clay preparation, basic throwing, glazing. It's not just about sales. I can do that. And third, I leaned forward, you never, ever call this a hobby again. She met my eyes. Deal. That afternoon, I put Bella to work cleaning the studio. Kira watched with barely concealed amusement as my formerly pristine sister scrubbed dried clay off the floors. Your first task, I announced, dropping a heavy bag of clay beside her. Wedging, 20 pounds. What's wedging? I demonstrated the technique, kneading the clay to remove air bubbles. Until it's perfectly smooth, no shortcuts. 2 hours later, Bella's designer blouse was ruined, and her hands were raw, but the clay was properly wedged. Now what? She asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. Now you learn to center clay on the wheel. I sat at my workstation. Watch carefully. The next few days fell into a routine. Bella arrived early, prepared materials, and observed my morning classes. Her corporate precision served her well in measuring glazes and maintaining inventory, but the actual pottery making humbled her completely. I don't understand, she muttered after her 10th failed attempt to center clay. I used to manage hundreds of people, but I can't make one stupid bowl. Pottery teaches patience, I replied, steadying her hands on the wheel. Something you might need right now. Griffin stopped by during one of these sessions. He raised an eyebrow at the sight of Bella covered in clay, but said nothing. Later, in my office, he voiced his concerns. Are you sure about this, Zara? Having her here? She needs this, I said, and maybe I do too. Just be careful. The media is still watching her. You don't want your business associated with a financial scandal. That evening, I found Bella still at the wheel, practicing basic forms. Her phone lay nearby, displaying another news article about Summit Corp's collapse. You should go home, I said. It's late. Can't sleep anyway. She gestured at her latest attempt at a bowl. At least this keeps my mind off everything. Any news from your lawyer? Nothing good. They found more forged documents today. Someone really wanted to destroy me. She looked up suddenly. You never told me what River said to you at the fair. I hesitated, then pulled out my phone, showing her his text about her downfall. That bastard, she whispered. He knew. He must have been planning this for months. What happened between you two? Bella's hand stilled on the wheel. I got him fired 3 years ago. He was embezzling funds, and I caught him. At least, I thought I did. Now I'm wondering if he set that up too. The next morning, Emery visited during Bella's practice session. Well, well, she smirked. The mighty have fallen. Emery, I warned. No, she's right, Bella said, not looking up from her wheel. I deserved this. The scandal, maybe, Emery replied. But something about this feels off. Mind if I do some digging? I still have contacts in corporate law. I nodded, watching Bella struggle with another piece of clay. Her corporate armor was cracking, revealing something I hadn't seen since we were kids. Vulnerability, and maybe even humility. That afternoon, a customer came in while Bella was manning the register. Aren't you that executive from Summit Corp? The woman asked, eyes narrowing. Bella straightened her clay-stained apron. No, ma'am. I'm just a pottery apprentice. Can I help you find something? Later, I found her in the supply room, crying quietly. Hey, I said softly. You did good today. Did I? She wiped her eyes. Because it feels like I'm failing at this, just like I failed at everything else. You haven't failed yet. I handed her a fresh apron. Tomorrow we start with handles. As she took the apron, my phone buzzed with a message from Emery. Found something about River. You need to see this now. Emery spread documents across my kitchen table after closing time, while Bella practiced in the studio. Look at this, she said, pointing to highlighted sections. River didn't just get fired from Summit Corp. He was fired from 3 other companies before that. All for embezzlement? No. Emery tapped another document. For revenge schemes. He has a pattern, gets hired, finds a target, and systematically destroys their career. Always someone in upper management who he claims wronged him. Kira, who'd stayed late to help research, pulled up an article on her laptop. Here's another one from 2019. A CEO in Seattle. River accused her of fraud, provided evidence, then disappeared when the investigation revealed the evidence was fabricated. But by then, Emery continued, the damage was done. The CEO's reputation was ruined. My phone buzzed. Another message from River. Ready to hear how your sister really operates? He's still messaging you. Emery grabbed my phone. Perfect, we can use this. Use it how? Set up a meeting, get him talking, record everything. Kira looked up from her laptop. I found something else. Before Summit Corp, River worked at Brighton Financial. Guess who else worked there? Bella, I realized. Exactly. She wasn't the one who fired him. She was just an analyst then. But she provided evidence that helped take him down. So this isn't just about Summit Corp, I said. It's personal. Very, Emery confirmed. And look at these bank records. 2 weeks before the scandal broke, River made several large transfers to offshore accounts. The studio door opened and Bella walked in, clay-stained and tired. She froze when she saw the papers spread across the table. What's all this? We quickly explained our findings. Bella sank into a chair, her hands trembling. Brighton Financial, she whispered. I almost forgot about that. He was stealing from client accounts but making it look like executive fraud. I found the pattern in the data. And now he's done the same to you, Emery said. But bigger, more sophisticated. My phone buzzed again. River. Coffee tomorrow? I have proof your sister's not as innocent as she claims. Set it up, Bella said immediately. But I'm coming with you. No, Emery and I said simultaneously. He'll be suspicious if you're there, Emery explained. Zara needs to go alone. Wear a wire. Is that legal? I asked. In this state, one-party consent, totally legal. The next morning, I sat in a downtown cafe, wearing a small recording device Emery had borrowed from a private investigator friend. River arrived precisely on time, looking polished and professional. Glad you came, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. How's your sister holding up? Why do you care? He smiled. Just curious how Karma feels. What did she really do to you? She ruined my life, he said simply. At Brighton Financial. She thought she was being a hero, exposing fraud. Never considered she might be wrong. Were you wrong about Summit Corp? His smile widened. Would you believe me if I said yes? The evidence speaks for itself. Your sister's fingerprints are all over those transactions. Forged fingerprints. River's expression flickered. Proving that would be difficult. especially with her accounts conveniently frozen. Like the accounts you moved offshore 2 weeks ago. The smile vanished. Where did you hear that? I have my sources, just like you had yours at Summit Corp. He leaned forward. Be careful, Zara. You're running a nice little business. Would be a shame if something happened to it. Are you threatening me? Warning you, family loyalty is admirable, but your sister made her bed. By exposing your theft at Brighton? River stood abruptly. This conversation is over. Is it? Because I have copies of your bank transfers. Interesting timing, right before the scandal broke. His face hardened. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone, showing him Emery's documents. Want to rethink that? For a moment, real fear flashed across his face. Then he composed himself. Send those to anyone, and your sister's reputation won't be the only one destroyed. I have friends in the media. How would your pottery business survive a scandal? As he walked away, my phone buzzed with a text from Emery. Got it all on record, meeting my lawyer friend now. I sat there, hands shaking slightly, remembering River's threat. He was right about one thing. A scandal could destroy my business too. The question was, what should I do with this information? Back at the studio, Bella was waiting anxiously. Well? I played the recording, watching her face as River's confession unfolded. When it finished, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. Why did you do this for me? Because, I said, some hobbies include protecting your sister. 2 days after my meeting with River, Bella surprised everyone by throwing herself into pottery with renewed determination. She arrived before dawn, practiced until her hands blistered, and stayed late helping with inventory. You don't have to prove anything, I told her one evening as she meticulously cleaned the wheels. Yes, I do. She didn't look up. To myself, if no one else. While Emery worked with her lawyer friend to build a case against River, life in the studio continued. Bella's dedication started showing results. Her bowls were becoming consistently centered, her glazing technique improving. Watch this, she called out one morning, carefully pulling up the walls of a cylinder. For the first time, it didn't collapse. Not bad, I admitted. Ready to try something harder? Anything. Good, because we have a big order due next week. 20 matching dinner sets for that new restaurant downtown. Bella's eyes widened. You're letting me help with that? You've earned it. We worked side by side, me throwing the plates while teaching her to trim and finish them. During breaks, she'd check her phone for updates from her lawyer, but otherwise stayed focused on the task. Remember when we were kids, she asked, carefully measuring glaze components. You tried to teach me pottery then too. You said it was boring. I was wrong about a lot of things. The studio door chimed. Griffin walked in, carrying a folder. Ladies, we have a situation. He spread out printouts on my work table. They were screenshots from a business gossip blog. Disgraced executive hides in sister's pottery shop. And, from corporate fraud to clay, a fall from grace. They found me, Bella whispered. That's not all, Griffin continued. River's been talking to reporters, suggesting your business might be involved in money laundering. What? I grabbed the papers. That's ridiculous. Doesn't matter, the rumor's out there. We're already getting cancellations for next month's classes. Bella's face went pale. This is my fault. I should leave before. No, I cut her off. This is exactly what River wants. He's trying to isolate you, just like he did with his other victims. But your business will survive. We have proof he's behind everything. Speaking of proof, Griffin said, your friend Emery called. The lawyer's ready to move forward, but they need something else. Bank records from Brighton Financial. Bella straightened up. Those would be in the corporate archives. I can't access them anymore, but... She paused. I know someone who can. She made a call, speaking quietly in the corner, while I tried to salvage what orders I could. After 10 minutes, she returned, looking determined. My old assistant at Brighton still works there. She'll help, but we have to move fast. River's been calling board members, trying to shut down access to the archives. What do you need? A distraction? She turned to Griffin. Can you set up a meeting with River? Make him think you're considering dropping me as a client. Griffin nodded. I can do that. Good. While he's busy with that, I'll get the records. For the next hour, we planned. Griffin would meet River at his office across town. Meanwhile, Bella and her former assistant would retrieve the evidence we needed. What about the studio? I asked. Those articles are already hurting business. I have an idea, Bella said. She pulled out her phone and started typing. Remember that restaurant order? What if we turned it into an event? She showed me her draft, an invitation to local media to cover the handcrafting process of their custom dinnerware. We show them real artistry in action, let them see what this business really is. You want to invite more media attention? Trust me, I learned one thing in corporate PR: control the narrative. That evening, as we cleaned up the studio, Bella's phone rang. Her assistant had come through. The Brighton financial records were being sent to our lawyer. River's going down, Bella said after hanging up. But, she gestured at a half-finished bowl on her wheel. Would it be okay if I stayed on here anyway? Just until I figure things out? I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. Gone was the polished executive who'd dismissed my work. In her place was someone who understood the value of creating something with her own hands. One condition, I said. You have to finish that bowl. She smiled and sat back at the wheel. As she worked, my phone buzzed with a message from River. Final warning. Back off or everything burns. I watched Bella carefully center her clay, her movements finally showing confidence. River could threaten all he wanted. He didn't understand that some things, once properly fired, don't burn. They only get stronger. The local news crew arrived just as Bella was pulling a perfect set of plates from the kiln. Their cameras zoomed in on her hands, still bearing the calluses of 3 weeks' hard work. So tell us, the reporter asked, what brought a former corporate executive to pottery? Bella smiled, her clay-stained apron a stark contrast to her old power suits. Sometimes life throws you a curve, and you have to reshape it into something beautiful. I watched from behind the cameras as my sister handled the interview with grace, demonstrating basic throwing techniques while explaining how the studio had given her purpose during difficult times. And your sister taught you all this? She did. Bella looked directly at me. She showed me that success isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet, it's about creating something meaningful. The segment was barely edited when Emery burst into the studio, waving her phone. Turn on the news, now! We huddled around my laptop just in time to see River being escorted from his office in handcuffs. The headline scrolled beneath, Former financial executive arrested for corporate sabotage and fraud. The Brighton records came through, Emery explained. They found his whole playbook, every company, every scheme. Your case broke it wide open. Bella's phone started ringing immediately. Her lawyer, reporters, former colleagues. But she let it go to voicemail, focusing instead on finishing a glaze application. Aren't you going to answer those? I asked. They can wait. This piece needs to be finished for tomorrow's firing. The studio door chimed. A man in a suit entered, one of Summit Corp's board members. Ms. Summers, he addressed Bella formally. We've reviewed the evidence. The board would like to discuss your reinstatement. Bella carefully set down her glazing brush. Reinstatement? With full back pay and a public apology, of course. Your office is still... No. The board member blinked. I'm sorry. I said no. Bella gestured around the studio. I found something real here, something honest. But your career... My career isn't defined by a corner office anymore. She picked up her brush again. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have orders to complete. After he left, I stared at my sister. Are you sure about this? For the first time in years, yes. She grinned. Besides, someone needs to handle the business side of this place properly. Your bookkeeping is atrocious. That afternoon, River's lawyer called, offering a deal. In exchange for leniency, River would provide a full confession and public apology. Should we take it? I asked Bella. She considered it while trimming a bowl. Yes, Let him talk. The truth is better than revenge. The next morning, River's confession hit the news. He detailed everything: the forged documents, the offshore accounts, the years of calculated destruction. As we watched the coverage, orders started pouring in for the studio. Our story had resonated with people. "Look at this," Kira called out, checking our online store. "We're getting international orders." Bella immediately switched into business mode. "We need to scale up production, hire more help, maybe expand the workspace." "Slow down," I laughed. "One thing at a time." "Sorry," she smiled sheepishly. "Old habits." The local paper ran a feature. Sisters turned scandal into success. The photo showed us both at the wheel, teaching a children's pottery class. Beneath it, they quoted River's public apology. I targeted someone I thought was driven by greed, only to find she was capable of something I never was: genuine change. That evening, after the last student left, Bella presented me with a piece she'd been working on secretly: a delicate butterfly vase, similar to the one she'd once mocked. "It's not perfect," she said, pointing out small flaws. "But it's honest work." I examined the piece. The butterflies weren't as refined as mine, but they had character, a raw beauty that spoke of real effort and learning. "Keep it," she continued, "as a reminder that sometimes our worst moments lead us to our best selves." "Getting philosophical in your pottery retirement," I teased. "Well, someone wise once told me that pottery teaches patience." She picked up a lump of clay. "Ready to teach me something new?" As we sat at our wheels, Mum and Dad arrived with dinner, having made it a habit to check on us during late working nights. "Look at you two," Mum said, watching us work side by side. "Just like when you were kids." "Better than when we were kids," I corrected. "Now she actually listens to me." Bella laughed, her hand steady on the wheel. "Only because you finally had something worth saying." The clay spun between her fingers, taking shape, transforming, just like she had, just like we both had. Sometimes the most beautiful pieces come from rebuilding what was broken. The morning of our studio's grand reopening dawned crisp and clear. Bella had spent weeks planning the expansion, transforming the space into something that honored its humble beginnings while embracing its growth. "Ready?" she asked, holding the ribbon across our new entrance. "Wait," I said, noticing a familiar figure approaching. River, recently released on probation, stood awkwardly at the edge of the gathered crowd. Bella spotted him too. Her hands tightened on the ribbon, but she kept her composure. "Should we call security?" "Let's hear him out." River stepped forward, looking smaller somehow without his corporate armor. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see," he began, "but I had to come." "Why?" Bella's voice was steady. "Because I owe you both an apology. A real one, not the scripted version my lawyers wrote." He pulled something from his bag, a newspaper clipping from years ago. "This was my first pottery piece from high school. I loved it, but my father said art was for dreamers, not winners. So you chose revenge instead of creation," I said. "I destroyed things because I couldn't bear to create them." He held out the clipping. "Maybe it's time I learned how." Bella and I exchanged looks. She nodded slightly. "Tuesday evenings," I said. "Beginner's class. Don't be late." A small smile crossed his face. "Thank you." As he merged back into the crowd, Emery appeared with her camera. "Ready for the big moment?" The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew applause from the gathered crowd. Students, customers, and local artists who'd supported us through everything. Inside, the expanded studio showcased not just my work, but pieces from our students, including Bella's butterfly collection. "Remember when this was just a hobby?" Griffin teased, admiring the new display cases. "Actually," Bella corrected him, "it was never just a hobby. I was just too blind to see it." The day unfolded with demonstrations, classes, and celebrations. Even Mom tried her hand at the wheel, creating what she claimed was a bowl, but looked more like abstract art. During a quiet moment, I found Bella in our new office, staring at the framed article about River's arrest. "Should we take that down?" I asked. "No, It's part of our story now. She turned to face me. You know, when I was at the top of my corporate game, I thought I knew everything about success, but I never felt as accomplished as I did making my first proper bowl. Speaking of bowls, I nodded toward her workstation, where her latest piece waited for glazing. That order won't finish itself. Always the taskmaster, she laughed, but headed to work. As evening approached, the last visitors filtered out, leaving just family and close friends. Dad raised a toast with his signature bad joke about firing up success, making everyone groan. Kira brought out a surprise, a cake decorated to look like a pottery wheel, complete with tiny fondant tools. To new beginnings, Emery proposed. And second chances, Bella added, glancing at the door where River had stood. After everyone left, Bella and I sat at our wheels one last time that day. The familiar hum of spinning clay filled the studio as we worked in comfortable silence. You know what I realized, she said finally. When I was trying to prove myself in corporate, I was always looking up. At the next promotion, the next achievement. But here, she gestured to her half-formed bowl. Here, I look down at what I'm creating, and somehow it feels like I'm reaching higher. That was surprisingly profound for someone who still can't center clay consistently, I teased. Hey, I centered it perfectly yesterday. Once, out of how many tries? We laughed, flicking clay at each other like we used to do as kids. Outside, the evening light caught the studio's new sign. Sister's Studio, where art meets heart. Thank you, Bella said suddenly. For what? For not giving up on me. For showing me there's more than one way to build something meaningful. I reached over and adjusted her hands on the clay. That's what sisters do. We shape each other. The wheel spun beneath our fingers, clay transforming as it always had, as we all had. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, orders to fill, classes to teach, maybe even a reformed River to mentor. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfectly centered. One more piece, Bella suggested. One more, I agreed, reaching for fresh clay. But this time, try to make something that actually looks like what it's supposed to be. Very funny. Just watch. This will be my masterpiece. And as we worked into the night, our laughter echoing through the studio, I realized that sometimes the strongest bonds are formed not from success or failure, but from the willingness to try again, together.